Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been sitting here taking notes on some of the arguments that have been made by the Democrats. One thing is that it's not widespread. I think we've covered this, but it's not widespread. It's not happening in a detectable number. Mr. Steil, what level of voter fraud is acceptable?
In my opinion, no voter fraud is acceptable.
Mr. Morelli, what level of voter fraud is acceptable?
No level.
No level. What amount of illegal aliens voting is acceptable, Mr. Steil?
None.
Mr. Morelli, what amount of illegal aliens voting is acceptable?
None.
None. So Americans are required to show photo ID to board a plane, to rent a car, to buy alcohol, to purchase a firearm, to open a bank account, and check into a hotel. Last time I checked, the Second Amendment was a constitutional right. We do have to show ID in order to purchase a firearm. Is that correct, Mr. Steil?
That's my understanding.
You need identification for everyday activities that are far less important than choosing the next leaders of the United States of America. And the American people overwhelmingly support applying that same standard to voting. Roughly 70% of voters agree that photo ID should be required at the ballot box. My Democrat colleagues have made comments such as the Republicans are doing this because we are struggling with favorability, when in fact Republicans hold a 3-point favorability advantage over Democrats currently. And a Pew Research study noted that only 40% of Democrats approve of Democrats. I support the SAVE Act because American elections should be decided by American citizens, period. No amount of voter fraud is acceptable. No amount of illegal aliens voting is acceptable. Ensuring that only eligible citizens participate in our elections should not be controversial. The Save America Act strengthens that protection by requiring voters to present photo identification when casting a ballot. Indiana was one of the first states in the nation to do voter ID. We've been doing that for many years. It has not resulted in lower voter turnout, much like in Georgia. Voter turnout has been consistent even after the passage of voter ID laws. But let's be clear about part of the reason why this legislation is necessary in the first place. Because of the failed border policies of the Biden administration, allowing millions of illegal immigrants to enter the country, when you combine an open border with weak election security, you erode public confidence in the system. My colleagues will argue there isn't evidence of, quote, widespread fraud. They'll say fraud is rare or difficult to detect. But the standard should not be whether fraud is widespread. The standard should be zero. Any level of fraud in American elections is unacceptable. It is a right. It is a right, and it should be protected by not allowing non-citizens to vote in our elections and not permitting fraud. Voter ID leads to less fraud, not more. 36 states already have voter ID, 14 do not. I don't think it would surprise the panel to note that the 14 states that do not have voter ID are led by mostly Democrat legislatures: California, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. This argument that it somehow causes voter suppression to have voter ID laws is an argument that Democrats have been making for years, and it hasn't led to lower voter participation. One thing that I often find our colleagues on the other side of the aisle doing is they try to say that we are doing the thing that they're doing. In my view, Democrats that don't want to support very common sense voter ID laws, maybe they're the ones that intend to rig elections, unlike, much like my colleague had said on the other side of the aisle tonight. Maybe that's why they don't want voter ID. It's very hard for me to understand. Any level of voter fraud in America should be unacceptable. This bill does not limit the rights of a single eligible citizen. At most, I would say it may cause a headache for maybe 1,000 individuals per state. It does protect the rights reinforcing election integrity and restoring public trust in our elections. I'm a married woman. I had to change my name. I did change my name when I got married. It did not cause me any issues voting in the next election, even with voter ID. So let's be clear. The only people threatened by basic election safeguards are the people who benefit from weak ones. It's that simple. So, Chairman Steil, we've heard an argument that it's too difficult to obtain acceptable ID as required by the bill, but all 50 states issue driver's licenses and non-driver state ID cards. Departments of motor vehicles often provide, like in Indiana, reduced fee or free IDs for the purposes of voting, especially for seniors or low-income residents, and several national nonprofits specialize in helping people secure ID. Mr. Steil, do you think that's an unreasonable standard to meet for the purpose of election integrity?
No. No. If I can take a second, because I want to dive into the ID argument. Can I just go back to the very beginning? We had a couple of comments in the previous panel that I think is worth referencing before we let that close out. In particular, as it relates to the argument that we're criminalizing the work of election workers. As we know, underlying in U.S. code that we're amending, that there is a mens rea requirement that an individual would have to knowingly and willfully do an action. So that means that someone would have to knowingly attempt to defraud the government by intentionally registering a non-citizens to vote. So you'd require that that individual would know that the registrant is a non-citizen. And so the fear-mongering and the comments that can exist in this space, I think, are misplaced. If I can clean up one other item that I think is relevant for the record before we ultimately get to a close, is discussion of the markup. As we know, the underlying SAVE Act, this is an enhanced SAVE Act because it picks up photo ID, that did go through the regular markup process in 2024. Obviously, it came through the House earlier through the initial procedures at the very beginning of this Congress, but there was robust debate on the bill. But let's go back to your photo ID requirement, if I can, Ms. Houchin. Photo identification is standard in Americans' lives across the board. It is incredibly commonplace. 36 states require photo identification to vote. We are looking at the minority of states that make a decision to not put in place common sense photo identification requirements that are needed, and I think it is a burden. It is not a burden that would be placed of any substance, but it is significant to enhance election integrity.
Thank you. And just to be clear, it is already illegal for non-citizens to vote in the election, but no proof of citizenship is required in many states. No proof of no proof of identification is required in many states. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
So I support the SAVE Act. Is there anything else you'd like to cover, Mr. Steil?
But I think your last question brings up a really important point, and this is a topic we hear time and again, where individuals will say, but it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in U.S. elections. That's accurate. This bill is about enforcement of the law. And so you could go to many states around the country and you could say, well, what's the speed limit on the interstate in your respective states? 75, 70, 65. This is about enforcing the speed limit, right? They're two very different things. You can put up a speed limit sign and let everybody know the speed limit in the state of Indiana is 70 miles per hour. It's a whole nother ballgame to say that we're actually going to enforce the speed limit in the state of Indiana. And so it's, yes, the underlying federal law is that non-citizens cannot vote in U.S. elections. The Save America Act is about enforcing that by putting in place citizenship verification at the point of registration.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just would like to note, as of May 2023, the Virginia Department of Election officials have removed 1,481 registrations from its official voter rolls with a reported reason for removal due to non-citizen status. Of those non-citizens who were removed, 335 individuals, or 22.6%, had cast a ballot in Virginia elections over the prior 4 years. In total, these non-citizens cast over 800 ballots. In response to inquiries, the Virginia Attorney General's office said it had no prosecution records related to this illegal voting, even though voting illegally is a Class 6 felony in Virginia. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Houchin. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and